Hello, and welcome to the Feeling Good Podcast, where you can learn powerful techniques to change the way you feel. I am your host, Dr. Rhonda Borowski, and joining me here in the Murrieta studio is Dr. David Burns. Dr. Burns is a pioneer in the development of cognitive behavioral therapy and the creator of the new TEAM therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 30 languages. His latest book, Feeling Great, contains powerful new techniques that make rapid recovery possible for many people struggling with depression and anxiety. Dr. Burns is currently an emeritus adjunct professor of clinical psychiatry at Stanford University School of Medicine.
Hello, Rhonda.
Hello, David, and welcome to all of our listeners across the country and around the world. This is episode 330. So our guest today is Dor Star. And Dor is an educational counselor. He has a master's degree in educational counseling, and he is a level 2 TEAM practitioner. And he works and lives in Israel. For the last 6 years, Dor has been doing something really cool. He's specialized in working with children at a very young age. He starts working with children as young as 4 years old, which is amazing. But most of his work is with children between the ages of 7 and 12 years old. And he works with children who have really various challenges and difficulties, such as attention deficit, hyperactivity disorder, or what we'll probably use the acronym ADHD. He works with kids who have Autism Spectrum Disorder, or ASD, children with learning disabilities, who have tantrums or outbursts of anger, children who have all kinds of anxieties, social difficulty, kids who are involved with bullying, and much, much more. Dor's work is really unique because he works mainly in small groups with 4 to 6 participants. And not only does he use the team therapy structure and model, he also uses the martial arts and sports as therapeutic tools, which is a great love of mine too. In his work, Dor uses the team model with some adaptations because of the kids' ages and because of sports methods, and he's getting great success with it. In fact, one can say that Dor discovered for himself and for his patients a new way to use the team model, which we're really excited to find out about. And today, not only does Dor apply the team model this way, he also teaches it to sports and other martial arts trainers who are interested in entering the field of child therapy. So welcome, Dor.
Hi, Rhonda.
And David.
Yeah, okay. I was just taking notes there. Welcome. Welcome, Dor. We're so excited to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, Dor, I had the pleasure of meeting you, Dor, at the Poland conference in Warsaw in August of 2022. And learned a little bit about you, but this is going to be a bigger dive into your work that we're really excited about.
Yeah, I'm excited too. And I have to start by saying that it's a huge honor for me to be in this podcast. And this podcast is actually, was and still is, a huge part of my training in TEAM-CBT. And I learned so much from it. I'm listening to 1 or 2 episodes every week. So it's a huge experience and a huge honor to be here. And the second thing is that I want to say, we never met, David, but you changed my life in a very on a professional, obviously, but also in a personal way, helping me communicate better with my colleagues, family, friends, and most important with myself. So thank you very much for giving the world the gift of teams. So
thank you so much. I really appreciate your words, and I know that Rhonda does too. And we're equally honored to have you on our podcast with your wonderful, compassionate, and creative work with kids. And we're dying to hear what you have to say.
Well, let me just read an endorsement that we had about a previous episode before we dive in with Dor. Sure. And this is regarding episode 322, which we called How Skillful Is Your Shrink, featuring Kevin Cornelius, LMFT. And so Carolyn wrote us, episode 322 was a great podcast. I love to hear that a therapist can find out how effective they are. And I loved it even more that the patients themselves can find out how effective their therapist is. I will definitely use this measure, the recovery coefficient. And she wrote to Kevin specifically, I want to put you at ease and reassure you, Kevin, that what you said and found out about the recovery coefficient is really interesting and helpful. For me, the podcast wasn't boring at all. I love working with figures. I love the math that goes with it. It's great and really important that therapists can find out how they're doing and where they can improve. And for patients, it's great to have the figures in black and white that show them the effectiveness of their therapist in the therapy. I believe seeing this evidence gives the patients a lot of hope and motivation to work together with the therapist, gives the patients hope and motivation to work together with the therapist to improve their issues. So for me, you could easily do more podcasts presenting figures that measure, prove, or disprove the effectiveness in the therapist and the therapy. Thank you so much for the podcast. I enjoyed it. Warmly, Carolyn.
Well, thank you, Carolyn. Carolyn is a wonderful human being who's put a tremendous amount of effort into learning TEAM and is always has beautiful and gracious things to say. We really do appreciate that. And I know Kevin does too. And I thought it was so courageous of Kevin to come on the podcast and publicize his effectiveness, which he didn't know at the start of the podcast. He thought he was doing really poorly because he was only getting on average 44% improvement per 50-minute therapy session with people. And in point of fact, that's as much improvement as all the schools of psychotherapy can get in 6 to 12 to 18 to 36 months. And so it was kind of a pleasant shock to his system to realize that in measuring his effectiveness with this new method I've created, it showed him he's actually doing fantastic work with his many lucky patients.
Sweet. So Dor, let's start off by finding out how you learned about team therapy.
Actually, I have a little bit of a funny story about my first session in TEAM-CBT, my first lesson. I will try to make it short as possible. So my first lesson in TEAM-CBT was in a Zoom meeting because it was part of my master degree. It's been given by Professor Yehuda Bar Shalom. So it was because it was during the Corona pandemic. So obviously all the lessons was recorded, but you have to be present because it was for TEAM-CBT level 1. So you have to be present with camera open and everything. But the thing is that I couldn't be there because at the same day my wife delivered my first son. So I wasn't able to be there, obviously. So I text to Yehuda and tell him that I can't. He obviously say, no problem, just see by the end of the week, before the next session, see the record. And I tell him, yes, of course, I will see the record, but I totally forget about it. It was a crazy week. And I always delay it. I said to myself, I will sit the next day and the next day and the next day. So the last day came, and it was one of the worst days of my life.
Oh, no.
Honestly. First of all, it was the first day that I got back to work because I took a few days vacation. And the second thing that my baby got into an hospital.
Oh, no.
It wasn't like a big thing, but but for me, I was very upset about it, obviously. And on the way to the hospital, I made my first and only car crash. And
oh, no.
Yes, not a big car crash, but still. So I got to the hospital and I spent the entire day and almost the entire night in the hospital in a very difficult environment. And I think it was in 1 o'clock in the night that I sat in a small room with my wife and child that finally got asleep. And I had this dilemma to see or not to see the record, or to lie to you and tell them that I saw the record or whatever. And I didn't know anything about TEAM-CBT, but I said to myself that I said to Yuda that I will see the record, so I will see the record. So I sat there, I think on a sink on a tiny screen, super unmotivated, super tired, and I pressed the play button. And this is actually important to know about me, is that from the first lesson, from the first like 10 minutes of the lesson, I became totally obsessed and about TEAM-CBT. I was shocked about everything. I was even in this scenario when I was tired and worried and everything was like against it. I was like fell in love in the system. And from this day forward, I was totally, I tried to learn as much as I can through, obviously through Yuda that helped me to do the level 1 and level 2 CBT. And also I was in Warsaw. Also, I listened to this podcast once or twice a week. And I'm totally obsessed about TEAM-CBT. I can't get enough. So this is actually very important to know about me. So this is
That's
how
an incredible.
First, met TEAM-CBT.
Yeah, David, do you want to comment on that?
No, I'll let you go ahead.
I mean, what an incredible story. You know, you're supposed to take this class with Yehuda Bar Shalom, who's one of our top trainers and a level 5 TEAM-CBT clinician himself, who we greatly admire. And we've had him on the podcast. And your wife has a baby. And so, of course, you can't take that class. And your first son, that must have been so exciting for you. And Yehuda said, that's okay that you missed the class. You just had a baby. But why don't you just watch the recording? But then, of course, the first week you have a baby, there's all sorts of stuff going on. You don't have time to watch this video. And like you said, you were unmotivated. And then on the last day, one of the worst days of your life, when your baby was ill and you had to take him to the hospital, you know, you're driving to the hospital, you got into a car crash on the way to the hospital, up all night, worrying about your son, probably your wife, worrying about your wife, and lack of sleep, all that going on. And then at 1 a.m., when your wife and your baby finally are calmed down, you think, should I listen to this video or should I lie to Yehuda and tell him I listened to the video? But it sounds like you had a person with a lot of integrity. So even though you had no motivation and you were super tired, you listened to this video of Yehuda teaching about TEAM-CBT. And within the first 10 minutes, you were completely hooked and you loved what you were learning. You listened to the whole thing. And since then, you've really been motivated. You use the word obsessed, but I'm using the word motivated to do everything you can to learn TEAM-CBT, which includes listening to the podcast a couple of times a week, coming all the way to Warsaw for the World Congress that was held there in August. And I imagine taking other courses that Yehuda or other people are teaching. So that's really exciting.
I'm going to start to work on my level 3 after the holiday.
Cool. I was just wondering about that. And so tell us how you've adopted team therapy and how you use it with children and how you've incorporated martial arts and other sports into what you do.
Yes. So like I said, after I learned about TEAM-CBT, I became super motivated, but I also became super frustrated because the way I see it, there is a huge difference between what I do with children and between TEAM-CBT. I thought that I have to choose between being a TEAM-CBT therapist or do what I know to do and love to do, that it's working with children from young age with different problems, using sport and martial art. So I thought that I had to choose. So I was very frustrated for the first few weeks of my training in TEAM-CBT. I was very frustrated. I was very worried. I didn't know what I need to do. But then I start to ask myself a very specific question. And the first question was, what is TEAM-CBT? And it's very difficult to answer these questions in front of you because obviously, and back then I wasn't even level 1. I was only like 3 or 4 weeks in my learning. But so it's not the right answer, but it's the answer that I gave to myself at that time. And the answer was that TEAM-CBT is a model of work, that you need to do the assessment and then you need to test before and after every session. And you need to use empathy and then do agenda and then do the use method. So I start to ask myself, can I use and do I need to use testing during my work? But because before I didn't, obviously. And the answer was, of course, I need to do it. I mean, it came so naturally. And then I asked myself, do I need and can I use empathy? And can I use the 5 secrets? And again, the answer was, of course, I need to use the 5 secrets. And the agenda was a little bit more trickier, and it is the key of my therapy. And also I think it's the key for a lot of therapists that do TEAM-CBT. But even in the agenda, I said to myself, yes, I need to check it. The first of all, now I know that yes, but back then I said to myself, okay, I need to check my agenda, and about the technique, the methods. I said to myself that I need to check my methods again. So the first thing that I did was use testing and use empathy. And the first thing that I discovered is that I was not as good as I thought. Actually, what I found out that none of my goals was achieved. And for all of my kids, I mean, they love to come to the class and it was fun most of the time, but it didn't change their lives. The therapist was complete failure if you look at it, if you want to look at it like this. And it was actually very heartbreaking moment for me to realize, to get this low score on empathy, and to do the testing not only during before and after a session, but also to check with the teacher, to check with the parents, to do the testing with them also, and find out that I didn't achieve almost none of my goals.
So, Dor, you were testing both the children, the teachers, and the parents?
I start testing the children first, mostly for empathy, but also and I also start to notice the result. I did my own testing to see if there is an improvement. And yes, I ask the parents, the teacher, I create all kind of way of testing. And maybe it's the time to say that I start to work about merging TEAM-CBT model into my setting of work, but it's not, I didn't finish it. I think I consider it like 60 or 65% finish. And the result now is amazing. I will we'll discuss it later, but I think that when we'll get to 80% merging, 90%, obviously with 100, the result will be so fantastic that we need to look about the way that we treat children in a different way. Because what I'm seeing today, it's maybe I am a little bit ahead of myself, but and I'm very honest guy. I'm not like a super, but the results speak for themselves. But back then, the result was terrible. And I have to say that without this podcast, and you, David, that you talk a lot about letting your ego die and just follow the result and just don't think about yourself and just try to improve. And this idea that failure is the best thing that can happen to you. So I use those ideas to cheer myself and start this journey. And like I said, I believe that I'm 60% done. And yes, now I have the way to do the agenda, and I changed my methods completely. I mean, what I did before was very, very weird for me when I think about it now. The idea that we can just basically don't do the agenda and use very general methods and use and do fun stuff and talk about. I mean, those ideas feel some weird for me, and don't have this order of stuff. Don't check the empathy. I mean, the way that I work now is very systematical. I have more than 70 or 80 different techniques that I use. Most of them are very, it's basically the same technique that TEAM-CBT do. But the other are different because I use martial art, and maybe I can speak about why I use martial art and sport, because it is interesting. And what I also want to talk about, maybe it's the agenda, because I add a step to the agenda that is very important, I believe, with working with children. Before the invitation, the first step.
Let me just slow you down for a second. We'll come to the agenda, but let's summarize what you've said so far. And then I had a question, but first, more power to you. Congratulations on letting go of your ego and discovering that your results weren't very good. And I find things like that all the time. And after a while, you get used to it, and it's kind of fun to learn and grow. But initially, it's a big blow to your ego, particularly if you think you're doing great, and then the data shows that you're not. And American expression, I tilt my hat to you. That's fabulous what you did. What testing tools did you use? How did you test your kids, and then what did the numbers show?
So the testing. So like I said, I always able to merge TEAM-CBT model like 60%, and the biggest problem that I have it's in testing.
Right.
Because those children are very small.
Yeah.
Small in age, they are very young. And it's a very short session of 45 minutes, and it's a small group, so it's not like individual.
Yeah.
So the testing need to be super simple, super easy, and super fast. So I do ask. So I do test how sad they come, how angry they come. If they are scared of something, if something happened to them. So I have those small notes that I do. And at the end of the session, I ask them 2 questions. First of all is, how much do you give me? How much I understand you and listen to you? And the second is, I have 3 questions, but one of them is more of a method. The second is how much you have fun this session, because if it's kid, it's important to have fun also, I believe. And if the session is not good, they will say it wasn't fun. And I also always ask them why. If you give me like 9, so tell me where I didn't listen or didn't understand you, or why it wasn't fun. And I also ask them, what grade do you give to yourself? And this is not a testing, it's more like a method that I use, but it's a great method, because a lot of time they will give themselves not the 10 result, which is the highest. They will give themselves lower, and I can ask them why. So I have this small paper that with all those stars and to do the testing, and they do it at the start of the lesson and at the end of the lessons.
That's
and
great.
Also I do it. Okay.
Go ahead.
And I do different testing with the parents and the teacher. So
Sure.
This is different testing.
Sure. Now, do the kids answer on a scale from 0 to 10?
Yes.
Did I understand you? How well
Yes.
did I do in understanding you? And then you say, what's my grade? And they give you a number?
Yes.
And it'll go from 0 to 10?
Yes.
Oh, that's great. That's terrific. And you ask 3 questions. How well did I understand you? Did I listen to you? That would be 1 grade.
Yes.
Was today's session fun? And what grade did you give yourself? I love that. I love the way that you've adapted it. Now, what numbers did you get initially when you said that you found out you weren't doing very well? What numbers did they give you?
So first of all, I didn't do this type of testing. It took me time to get this right.
Sure.
But I remember one time that I worked with a kid. He was 11 years old at the time, and we had the best sessions. It was so much fun. I speak with him. We talk. Then we trained and we fight. And he was smiling all the time. And just for the record, not for the record, just for as a habit. So I asked them. So by the way, how much do you give me about listening and understanding to you? And I was like ready for a perfect score. And then he gave me 3.
Yeah.
And it felt like he punched me in the face. And or more exactly in the stomach.
Mm-hmm.
It was very hard to keep to all this poker face and ask him why, what I did. And he told me that that he don't even know me. I didn't introduce myself. I didn't ask him about himself. We just jump into the session. And it was I did it in a very early stages of my TEAM-CBT training. And it was like one of my first trying to use testing. And it was such a revolutionary idea because I was sure 100% that it is one of the best sessions that I did.
Yeah, that's harsh.
I've had the same thing myself.
Me too.
Very often, thinking I'm doing so great, and then just get slammed bad grades from the patient. So I'm just thrilled to hear that you've doing this and the way that you've simplified the tests as well. I'm very impressed with that. Short and simple and clear is the way a test should be. And that's what you've created. And I really admire your fantastic courage. And I love to hear about your failures. People love to hear about my failures also. And that's so interesting.
I can talk a lot about my failure. My failure when...
Yeah. So tell us some more about the empathy techniques you use, the agenda setting techniques you use, the methods you use. Everything you're saying is very fascinating to Rhonda and David. I'm assuming it's to Rhonda.
Oh yeah, very.
It's from David. I didn't ask Rhonda how.
No, it's really fascinating.
Yeah.
So empathy. It's, by the way, I use martial arts for 3 reasons now. Martial art and sport. The first reason is to create the empathy. The second reason is to establish the agenda. And the third way is as a method. I don't use only martial arts method. I use also more CBT method, different method that you use in team, but I also use a lot of martial arts as a method. For the empathy, I discovered this wonderful idea that I added. So there is obviously those 5 secrets, which are incredible and help me so much. Mostly with kids that have this tantrum or rage attack. I had so many cases that kids was in a complete rage. And just go to them and listen to them and tell them that they are right about whatever the reason is, was almost like pressing a magic button that make them listen to you. So so obviously I use the 5 secrets, and I'm sure that you and know that you talk a lot about them in the podcast. But I also use what is called the 5 ways of love. I don't know if you heard about them.
Mm-mm. No.
So the idea is that there is 5 ways to show love to another. And some people are more attend to one way, and some people to another. And so the first way is a verbal way to speak. And those are the 5 secrets, like the way that to show love and respect in the way that you speak, and just to be master at it. The second way of love is to give service, like making someone coffee, for example, or something like that. And giving a service to kids, like tie their shoes, give them water if they forgot their bottle, just to see if they need something and give it to them as a service. It's a great way to create a connection between you and children. And children need to recognize you as like a grown-up that they can trust. It's a very important issue with creating a connection between a grown-up and a child. So giving service, it's something that is very, very important. And there is many ways that I give service to kids. And I always notice if kid needs something, if you know the way to the bathroom, whatever. The third way is by spending time with the children.
Having fun.
What?
Did you say fun?
No, spending time.
Oh, time. Oh, yeah.
Time. Like dedicated this time just for you and him. Even inside of a group, call him, create those intimate moment between you and him. Make him feel special. Make him see that, ask him to stay 5 minutes after everybody go. There is so many ways, and you need to pay attention to those things, because a lot of the kids that I work with are kids that the grown-up don't automatically like. They have anger issues.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They try to push you away. And if you follow your instinct, you will find out that you don't want to give them service. You don't want to spend time with them. It's just like you need to work on yourself. Obviously, on the 5 secrets as well. Show them respect. The disarming, it's super important. The fourth way is gifts. This is something that is I don't do a lot of gifts, but I do give them some stickers and stuff like that. Something special that I made for them, something they can take home with them to show to their friends, their family. And the last one is it's about touch. It's about contact. And again, I found this subject, obviously it's a complicated issue, but it's very important to be able to play with kids, to be able to create this contact, not just like verbally. And this is why one of the reasons why I love martial arts so much, because you can play with them, you can touch, you can create those deep moment of contact that are creating this deep connection. And when I use those 5 way of love, and again, obviously, I think the 5 secrets are the most important and most tricky one. But when you combine them, this is what you need to create this strong relationship with children.
Mm-hmm.
And it's helped me to be able to demand them, to ask them follow me to the root of the agenda and to the methods, which are very difficult. And so I use those. So this is something that I add to the empathy, these 5 ways of love.
Great.
That's fantastic. I love that.
And so after you use the 5 secrets, that's part of the verbally, and the other components of the 5 ways of love, do you ask them, how close do you feel to me? Like we ask adults, what grade would you give me for empathy? Have you adapted that step with the children?
Yes, I ask them, what grade do you give me about listening and understanding? This is what I ask them now. It's like, again, I'm not totally sure about the testing yet, but now I ask them this question, and it give me good result, because a lot of the time kids tell me, okay, I give you a 9.5 because you didn't listen with me at this point. And I always tell them that I don't like to get 10. I don't like to get perfect score. I want them to make me better. So they always try to find those moments.
Cool.
Do you want to learn a new technique right now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Okay, let's use your number system. 1 from 0 to 10. I'm going to ask you a question. How would you grade Rhonda and David right now in terms of how well we're doing and listening to you and understanding you and showing respect?
Both of you are perfect 10, I believe.
Okay.
It's hard
that's a new technique that we're using within the session, not just at the end of the session, to ask the patient, how am I doing right now? And then they can grade you. And I have a little company. We're developing a Feeling Good app. And we're just trying to raise some funds, and we've done some beta tests. We have about 6 people in our group, and we use that in our group. And so sometimes tensions come up in our small group. And so then, I'll raise my hand, and then some will say, well, what's up, Dave? I say, well, let's grade ourselves right now. What grade would you give me? What grade would you give the group? And then we use A, B, C, D, and F. And F is the worst. Then sometimes people say, well, this is a D minus or something, terrible grade. And then I say, well, let's talk about that. That's what I'm feeling also. And then all of a sudden we develop a good rapport. I don't know if you use that while you're doing the martial arts with the kids.
Yes, I actually do it all the time. I use testing all the time. I test things, many things, not only myself, but other things as well, like during the session all the time. And I totally agree. This is super important. I had one kid that he was very hard, that never communicated with any grown-ups. And I just ask him to give me grade every time, everything, every session, every activity, and until I get the perfect score. It took me 2 weeks together, 2 or 3 weeks together. But the testing during the session are super important, because every time I have doubt, and it's happened a lot, I ask him, okay, let's do a brief testing. How am I doing right now, or different things.
Yeah. I have another question before you tell us about your agenda setting and your methods. But Rhonda, what percentage of our listeners are therapists? We did the survey. It's high. I don't remember what it was.
I think it's I think it's like 30 to 40%. There's more non-therapists.
Yeah, 30 or 40%. So a lot of the people who hear this podcast, and there will probably be the first week or two, maybe 10,000 people will hear this in the first week or two. And so there'll be 3,000 or 4,000 therapists who will hear what you're saying today. And many of them refuse to use testing. And they have a lot of excuses for not doing testing. What would you say to them?
I don't know how to do therapy without testing. It's because you can't know what happened in the mind of the patient. And even if you do a good job, you can always do better with testing, because it's just making you better, and it also open a lot of conversations and lots of the talk, because a lot of the time the children come to the session like in 4 groups, so they come as 4 and they're super laughing, and they laugh and they scream, and they have a lot of fun because it's a fun session. Everybody look happy. But then I ask them, how do you feel? And then they start say, I fought with my mother this morning. I got into a fight with the kid. I mean, they give grade about how sad they were. They are. How sad they are, or hungry they are. And before that I did the testing, I didn't know, and there was like a ton of subject that comes and we didn't do the martial. Sometimes we didn't do the martial arts or anything, because I planned to do certain things, but all those things was irrelevant, because the kids come with something from their home that I didn't know about it, and if I don't use testing, I will never know them.
Right.
Yeah, right.
So, Dor, are you working at a clinic? Are you working at a dojo? Like, what's the setting that you're seeing the children?
I do, I think 35 groups like this. And I work for the Minister of Education in Israel in schools. And also in private clinics. Yes, so I work in schools, and I work in a private clinic.
And do kids work with you in an ongoing way? Like as a martial artist, are you using martial arts techniques with them as part of the methods, or are you also walking them through the entire process from a white belt to a black belt?
I don't do the white belt to black belt. Maybe I should.
No, I'm not. I'm just curious.
It's not a bad idea. I didn't get to like I said, it's not. Maybe I need to do like some kind of special leveling for this plan. For this.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting that. I was just wondering where it fits. So.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
I use martial art as a method. I have many methods that I use martial art with, but I use also for empathy and also for agenda.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about how you use testing and how you work with empathy. So is there anything else you want to say about how you develop empathy with the children before we hear about how you use agenda setting?
Or I would vote, just on the interest of time, because to move on to agenda setting.
Yes. Okay, great.
Yeah, I agree. So the thing about agenda, and I believe this is the biggest difference between treating a children or treating an adult or teenager. And the biggest difference is that with children, there is a separation between the patient and the client. The client are the teacher or the parents, and the patient are the children. And what happened most of the time, what I did before, and what I believe most of the therapists are doing, is we set the assessment. When we do the assessment, we do the assessment with the parents, and we do the assessment with the teacher or whatever. And I do it too. I do the assessment with the teacher and the parents, obviously. And we set up a goals. We said stuff like, this kid have a problem with understanding social situation, or this kid is not attended at school like he should be. This kid have an anger issue or communication issue or whatever. So you write those goals, and then you go to work with the patient. But for most of the cases, I believe like 90% of the cases, the patient will not be aware of the goals. And even if they will be aware, they not necessarily think that it's not their goals. Sometimes they don't even think that this is their problem. The parents may think that the kid have an anger issue, but the kids will say that he have a relationship issue with his teacher. So we try to do therapy for children, but we don't ask them if they want to be treated on this matter. We just force them to be there. And sometimes, because I do martial art, the parents will tell to the children, you are going just to train in martial art, you don't go to therapy. So I get lots of kids, they don't know why they are ill. The parents gave me tons of very, very difficult goals for the kids, and I always supposed to be able to do it if the kids don't even aware. And if I ask him, he will say to me, no, I don't want to do it. I don't think it's a problem. So I was very struggling with agenda.
Yeah, that's so mind-blowing to me what you're saying, because although my practice was mainly adults, I had children from time to time, but I always had the exact same idea that I'm not there. If you're trying to enforce the parents' agenda, you're not doing therapy, you're just being a police officer, and it's not going to work. And if you find the something that the kid wants, and you work on that, I'm distracted here because my cat is asked for candy, and then if I don't give the cat candy, she gets on the keyboard and gets in front of the computer screen, so I can't see. So I'm giving her some candy right now. But yes, and that the magic comes when you work through what the child wants, and they're the boss, they're the teacher, you're the student, and you're helping them achieve something that they want to achieve. I think that's what you were saying, if I heard correctly.
Yes, exactly.
And it's I don't know what percentage of American therapists who work with kids know this. It just seems so obvious, but I have the fear that an awful lot of American therapists, maybe therapists worldwide, think their job is to do these things that the teacher wants or that the parents want.
Because they pay them, by the way.
And they call that the auto repair model. Mm-hmm. You bring your car to the auto repair shop, and then they fix it for you and give it back to you at the end of the day. And that's what they think. Here's our child. He has an anger problem. Fix him, and then we'll pick him up in the evening, all fixed. And I think that's the way a lot of people think about working with children. What do you think?
I think this is exactly the way that I used to work with children. And back then, the idea was that if the kids have, for example, a problem in concentration, to concentrate in his class, I can work on concentrating on doing like a karate move or whatever, and magically it will be effect on them, on the classroom or something like this. And now I think the idea, it's just absurd for me, because first of all, children are very good of separating things, like separate between the mother and the father. So separate the way that they behave here and there, and in school, so in front of one teacher and another teacher, and another, it's just a totally different setting, and the kids don't know what to expect from him. It's just a weird idea. But back then, I had so many excuses, like theoretic. I use my knowledge in therapy, in all kind of theory, to explain why I'm not the one of that fault. That it's need to be like those very, very long therapeutic, or that maybe can take years, or the parents are the one that fault, or the teacher are fault, or the entire educational system is the one to blame. I had a ton of excuses, but again, when you start to stop blame the others and look about on yourself, so I discovered that the problem that I was a very bad therapist, and I need to be improved.
Cool.
And so once you have the agenda set and you know what the child wants to work on, tell us about the methods.
Yes. So the idea was that I had one more step before the invitation to the agenda.
Okay.
And the step that I do before the agenda is to set the goal for the therapy with the children. And I'm not going, and if it doesn't work, if it don't want to give me any goals, I go back to empathy, and I tell to the parents or to the client or the teacher, look, this kid don't want to get help. So I can do nothing with him, only empathy. Because if it's a private clinic, so I tell them that I need to stop seeing him maybe. But if it's like in school that I have to see him, so I tell him, okay, so I will give him empathy, but just to know the result, I will not be able to achieve those goals because the kids don't want any goals, but don't set his own goals. But after a lot of testing, I have now, I think, 7 or 8 different techniques for this stage of setting goals. Mm-hmm. And it's rarely never happened that the patient don't create his own goals. Even kids that start from the age of 4, at the age of 4 they can set their own goals. I do have some cases. I have one case that in my mind for kids that don't give me any results. So I did what I said. I work with him in school. So I go to the woman that's in charge on me, and I tell her I can't get his result because this kid is not there. But it's rarely never happened to me now.
So, and then what are your techniques for setting goals with children? But I just love everything you're saying, by the way. It just resonates. And I didn't say this earlier, but when you were talking about disarming kids who were angry, I've had exactly the same experience. Everyone else is trying to contain the child, tell them to stop doing that. And instead, if you say, you're right to be angry, you should be angry. Tell me about that. I like your anger. I like what you're saying. Then they just melt in your hand, and it suddenly turns around. And again, I've thought probably a lot of people working with kids don't know this, and like teachers and others are trying to control the child, and that just forces the child to go out of control. But we'll come back to your goal setting techniques. What are just a couple of them so we get a feel for what you do?
Okay, so first of all, what you do need to understand about to have a great knowledge on development. Because because CBT is like it's a cognitive, and we say that thought creates feelings, and the way that kids in the age of 4 think, and the things that are important, it's not the same thing that a kid in the 9 years old think. It's not the way that he think, and it's not the thing that he find value. So you do need to have a great knowledge on how those kids in different age what they are thinking about, what they think that they are value important. Maybe it's a topic for another episode, but I think that the most difficult age, it's between 8 to 12, 8 to 11 even. This is the most difficult age, but maybe it's for another episode. Anyway, I can give. So one way that I do it, I ask them why you come to learn martial art, and I have this paper, and I ask them why do you want to use martial art, and and I tell them every kid in the group, we didn't get into it, but the martial art, it's a personal sport. It's not like soccer or football. So each one have his own goals and in his own way. So I always tell them, you need to know why you train in martial art, and you need to know why your partner train martial art if you want to train with him. And I have this paper that asks them why you are training in martial art. and there is many reasons. For example, I want to defend myself. I want to control my anger or use my anger better. I want the teacher will stop blaming me for something that I don't do. I want to eat back if I get bullied. For example, I want to eat back. I want to be able to it's fun. I want to make friends. And I have those 15 different reasons why to do martial arts, and the kids circle them. And then he give me the goals. For example, I have this kid that is cry all the time. People throw balls at him, and he's crying all the time. And he circle. I want to be able to eat them back. So I had this. So now it's very simple. I just go to the technique. I have his own target. I do everything. I do the invitation. I do the I ask him the cost and obviously the cost and loss because there is a good reason why I cry. I always say crying. It's everything. I have a good reason. So I do all the agenda. After I give me the goals, I do the entire agenda. Do the paradoxical inquiry, everything. But after I do that, okay, the technique it's like a knife through butter because so for one case I asked the bully. I had two kids. One was the bully, and the other got bullied by him in school. And after this kid tell me that, I asked the bully, "Do you want to help him? Which become stronger and stop crying and give and like throw the ball back?" And he said, "Yes, of course I want to help him." And I just said, "Okay, so push him." Or throw the ball at him, and then let's see, and I told the other kid, you need not to stop crying and push back, and he did it, and it pretty much we did 2 sessions like this, and the problem was done. So the techniques are very simple. Sometimes, if the patient setting his own goals, and you do the entire agenda process, when you really give respect and a place. To the reason why he's doing the bad stuff, why he's bullying other people, why he's crying, why I don't know, don't like his teacher, whatever. If you do, the techniques are very simple. I have lots of technique, but the technique are actually the fun part and the simple part. The hard part, the part that gives me like every time like a goosebump, it's the agenda.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Yes.
So explain it, Rhonda.
Well, helping kids set their own goal, so that you had said the teacher, the parent might say this kid has an anger problem, but the child is coming in and saying, no, I have a relationship problem. Or the child says, I'm being bullied. Well, maybe he's being bullied, maybe he has a crying problem, or he's not defending himself, or maybe it's a confidence problem without using those words. So these 7 or 8 techniques that you use for helping the child to set their own goal. And then you're doing the paradoxical, inquiry and looking at all the good reasons why they cry or why they're engaged in the behaviors that maybe other people want to extinguish. Once they see the goodness in their symptoms or in whatever their complaints are, then like everyone else, it's easier to give them up. And then it seems like the techniques that you use are pretty simple and help the kids achieve their goal pretty rapidly. And that's, I just can't stop smiling and feeling so happy about the work that you do. It sounds so fun and cool and impactful. And you're changing these kids' lives maybe forever.
Some of the techniques are a little bit more complicated, but yes, basically they are simple. They have to be simple because kids need to be able to use them even without me.
Exactly.
In the end, without me.
So if we're having a session in my Tuesday group tonight on bullying, actually how to deal with bullying, and if a child has the complaint of being bullied, but do you have some tips? Maybe I can pass your wisdom on to our Tuesday training group at Stanford tonight, because we'll have about 40, 50 people, and I think a lot of them have been bullied, so they're very eager for tonight's session.
Right. It is a complicated issue. subject. But the idea is that the kids that are bullied, that are getting bullied, most of the time it's because he can't do the process of giving. I mean, this is a complicated idea, but children in the beginning, like when they are very small, until the age of 4 or 5, they are concentrated on themselves. They take the power from grown up and build their own self, their own idea. And from the age of 4 until the age of 7 or 8, there is a process that the kid needs to give the idea that he is special, give up the idea of him being special to become an equal part of the group. Later on, he will become when he will be a teenager, he will learn that he is a separate individual. But this step is between 4, sometimes 5, sometimes 6. This is obviously it's different. Till 11 and 12, you need to give up the idea that he is special and being willing to accept to be like everyone, accept the rules of the group, and accept that he is equal. Because at this age, the group of the kids are their entire world. They separate themselves from the grown-up. There is a very certain rule. You can't cry. You can't tell you can't go to grown-up to solve your problems. I don't know how you say it in English, but you can't go to grown-up. You need to solve the problem inside the group. By the way, I need to give credit to the great work of Dr. Gerfi Fisher, who wrote those amazing book about child development that gave me those ideas. And most of the children that are getting bullied are the kids that struggle with the idea of being equal in the group. And they are not accepting the group, and they are constantly in conflict with the group leader. And if in the process, this is obviously a little bit of it's not an easy process, but Dr. Gerfi Fisher called this process like lower your head to the group, and being like willing to be part of everyone and being equal and not special. So maybe it was a little bit of a complicated answer, but I think to understand it, it's the key to dealing with bullying, from both sides, by the way.
Can you summarize that, Rhonda?
Well,
it's tough.
It's so what you've described, the developmental process of like birth to time kids are 4 or 5 years old, they are building themselves as an individual, as a unique person. And then after 5, 6, these ages are fluid. They need to give up being special and be an equal part of the group that they're in, the school group that they're in, or the sibling group that they're in, or whatever group process they're in, and accept the rules of the group, whatever they are. The rules of the group of, not crying, not telling on other students, other kids your own age. And then as a teenager, you again get to be unique and special in your developmental process. And what, Dor, are you saying that a lot of the kids, or all the kids who are being bullied, they aren't accepting, they're in that age group between 5 and 11 or 12, and they're not accepting the group rules. They're in conflict with whoever is taking the role of the group leader. And that's one of the causes of them being bullied. Like bringing them back into the fold of the group or the rules of the group.
Yes. And one more thing, that if we are as a grown-up, if we will try to defend them, most of the time, obviously in the worst case, we have to interfere. But in general, if we will interfere, we will make the thing worse. Because children need to learn how to solve their own problem inside the group of the kids, and involving a grown-up they will look like a baby, is like small, like crying. You need to use those small kids tools You don't use the tools of a big boy, of big kids that are much more complicated. So you need to learn them. And I do have like this page of the 10 ways to solve any kind of social problems, not social, relationship problem. And one of the way is tell a grown-up. The other way is to cry. And I talk to them a lot about, because I do the paradoxical way, so I talk to them about the benefit of doing this. And if they choose to give up those ideas of going to grown-ups or to cry, and so I show them that there is 8 different ways. Actually, there is more, but I summarize it to 10. Some of them are actually 2 or 3. And inside the group, this is why I work with group. They can making a lot of experiment with those tools, those more complicated way to solve problems.
Wow.
Thank you.
Dor, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
I think we have to wrap up now, because we've been on the podcast about an hour, a little bit more than an hour.
It's been an hour.
And, when we met in Poland, Dor, and you told me a little bit about the work that you did, I was really enthusiastic and hopeful that you could come on the podcast even then. And listening to how you've adapted the team model, how you're incorporating testing and empathy and testing throughout your work, not just at the beginning of the end, but in the middle, how you've simplified the testing so that it's age appropriate for children. And you've incorporated that mentality of making things simple, using every team technique, but making it applicable for kids. It's just so admirable. Out of A words. It's just really, yeah, I just I can't stop smiling listening to what you're doing.
I have a question for you. Do you write well? Are you a good writer?
I am I am okay writer. Yes.
If I were in your shoes, I'd be. You're like when I was learning cognitive therapy in the late 1970s. I got excited, so I wanted to write. That's why I wrote Feeling Good, so I could share the techniques with others. And of course, I write all the time now. And I was just thinking how great it would be if you were to write a book on what you've been telling us today on the podcast. Of course, it would be in much more detail, and you'd have a couple of chapters on testing and show therapists or whoever's interested in how simple it can be to use testing and the importance of humility and then the kind of empathy, both how you use the 5 secrets as well as the 5 secrets of love or whatever it is. And then the whole issue of agenda setting, who's going to be the patient? Is it going to be the teachers you're serving, the parents you're serving, or the child? I think that is so cool. And then the kind of the many methods that you use, I'm sure, it would be a book with many chapters and many great tools and messages for people. But I just think it would be awfully cool to have it as a resource for people. I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah. I actually start to work on a book. We didn't talk about it, but I also do courses for other coaches in sport and martial art that want to get into this field. And I create this, it's unfinished book, but I want to give them this book so they can search and find a technique very special, or to be able to remind what we teach. And I also, when I will get to 70 or 80% merging TEAM-CBT to my work, I will go to do my PhD on the subject, because I do think because we didn't even talk about it, but I have so many examples. I don't think we have time, but the results are phenomenal. I mean, and we didn't talk about it, but I work with kids with autism, ADHD, social anxiety. I
Yeah.
so
See,
much
those
to
could
say.
all be chapters also. You could have chapters on, TEAM, and then that would be that could be book 1, and then book 2 would be applications to autism, to social anxiety, all these different topics.
Okay,
And then
yeah.
you'd have two really fantastic books there that I think there'd be tremendous interest in.
Yeah.
I agree. And, David talks about, tell me if I got this wrong, David, but one of the motivations for writing Feeling Good was that you wanted to give that to your patients.
Yeah. And one of the reasons I wrote the ebook, I just was writing that for my students at Stanford, the psychiatric residents. And I wrote it really for them. Of course, none of them were ever interested in it, but a lot of other people have been.
Right.
And so that's how my Tools, Not Schools of Therapy, how that book came into existence. Absolutely. You have tremendous insights, and each of them is like an awakening, an enlightenment for people, because I think most people working with kids and teenagers have the wrong approach, the wrong ideas, and I think what you're doing is just fantastic.
Thank you, David.
What better way to end the podcast, getting an invitation from David Burns to write a book incorporating your methods into the team model that he's created.
That's incorrect.
Two
books.
Two books. You're right. That was incorrect. Okay, Dor, I want to thank you so much. I know it's really late in Israel right now, and I want to thank you for taking the time to speak with us and come onto the podcast. It's really been enlightening and very, enlivening.
Absolutely. You've given us a tremendous gift today, tremendous amount of knowledge and beautiful insights. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David. And again, it's a huge honor to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been another episode of the Feeling Good podcast. For more information, visit Dr. Burns' website at feelinggood.com, where you will find the show notes under the podcast page. You will also find archives of previous episodes and many resources for therapists and non-therapists. We welcome your comments and questions. If you want to support the show, please share the podcast with people who might benefit from it. You could also go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. I am your host, Rhonda Borowski, the director of the Feeling Great Therapy Center. We hope you enjoyed this episode. I invite you to join us next time for another episode of the Feeling Good podcast.